The silent records. The Galactic archive was endless, a sea of glowing data crystals stacked higher than towers on ancient worlds. In those records, every battle was written, every victory, every defeat. Nothing escaped the eyes of the archivists who guarded the truth of the galaxy, or at least that was what everyone believed. But among those endless records, there was silence. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of something missing. Entire systems showed traces of war, ruins, drifting wrecks, broken moons. But the records said nothing. No war was ever recorded there. No enemy named, no battle described. Archivist Yalara had studied wars her entire life. She had read about the siege of Nara, the fall of the Venari, the firestorms of the Kurlon sector. She thought she had seen all there was to see. Yet when she came across the silence, she felt something strange. It was not just an error. It felt like someone had cut history with a knife. She pressed her hand against the glowing console. "Show me restricted files," she whispered, but the system responded coldly. "No records found." Yalara frowned. She had seen ruins herself on a visit to the Outer Rim. Entire colonies were wiped out, whole fleets lost, yet the archive showed no trace of how it happened. Late that night, alone under the pale light of the archive towers, Yalara found an old traveler. He was not like the others who studied history. He carried scars on his face, his eyes heavy with things seen. When she asked about the missing records, the man gave a bitter smile. "You want the truth?" His voice cracked. "The truth is gone, erased." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "But I was there when the sky burned. It was the humans." Yalara froze. Humans. The word itself sounded strange. They were not an old race, not one of the ancient powers of the galaxy. In fact, most species hardly spoke of them. Some even mocked them as a young, reckless people. How could they have been involved in a war big enough to vanish from the records, the humans? Yalara repeated, her voice trembling. The traveler nodded. Yes, they came with fire in their hands, not for conquest, not for power, but for survival. And in one night, they ended an enemy we all feared. Her heart raced, an enemy so powerful that it shook the galaxy, and humans defeated them. Impossible. And yet the man's eyes told no lies. But if it was true, she whispered, why is there no record? The traveler's face grew dark. Because the humans erased it themselves, he said. They fought, they bled, they won, and then they wiped their names from history. They wanted the galaxy to forget. The thought chilled her. Who would fight such a war and then choose to be forgotten? It made no sense. Most species carved their victories into stone. They built monuments, they sang songs. But humans, according to this man, had done the opposite. Yalara could not sleep. The silence in the records gnawed at her. She began searching. Further, hacking into restricted channels, crossing lines that could cost her her career. The more she searched, the more fragments she found. Transmissions cut mid-sentence. Star maps with missing sectors. Files marked classified by unknown authority. And then, one night, she found something more. Buried deep within corrupted files, she found a single image. An alien warship burning. Its hull was massive. Larger than mountains, symbols of a once-feared empire painted across it. But in the corner of the image, a human battleship hovered, small compared to the giant. Yet untouched, her blood ran cold. The enemy ship was one she recognized from legends. The Korath Dominion, an empire said to be unbeatable. Entire coalitions had failed against them, and yet here was an image, clear as the stars, showing a Korath. Warship in flames with a human vessel standing before it. Yalara's breath quickened. She felt as if she had uncovered a forbidden truth, a story too big to remain hidden. But the file collapsed into static. The system shut down, and a cold message glowed across her screen. Unauthorized access detected. Report filed. Her heart pounded. She looked around the dark archive chamber. Her reflection stared back from the crystal walls. What had she done? She had touched a truth the galaxy had buried, a truth about humans and an erased war. For the first time in her life, Yalara felt fear, not of the enemy in the old stories, but of the silence itself. A silence chosen, a silence enforced. The next day, as she walked through the crowded halls of the archive, she felt eyes on her. Strange figures she had never seen before followed at a distance. Were they watching her because she had touched the hidden records? Or because she now knew the word that should not be spoken? Humans. Yalara's steps quickened. Her mind raced. The traveler's warning echoed in her ears. If you search for them, you will not return the same. That night, she sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stars outside. The silence of the records pressed on her chest like a weight. She whispered to herself, "Why would humans hide this? What are they afraid of?" Then her console flickered on its own. Words appeared across the screen, not from her system, but from somewhere else. "You are not ready for the truth." Her blood turned to ice. The message vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. Yalara's heart raced. She knew now, without doubt, that the silence was not an accident. It was a wall built by human hands, a wall hiding something so terrible, so powerful, that the galaxy itself was forced to forget. She leaned back, trembling, whispering. Into the night, what did the humans do? And far away, beyond the stars she gazed upon, a forgotten fleet slept in silence, waiting. The forgotten war Yalara could not shake the warning from her mind. The words burned into her memory. You are not ready for the truth. Yet curiosity was stronger than fear. She was an archivist, and archivists lived for the truth. To let it remain buried was to betray her duty. Her days became restless. She continued her normal tasks in the archive halls, cataloging events of past wars. But every time her eyes scanned glowing crystals, her thoughts drifted back to the silence. Every story of every empire was here, except the one where humans fought. She felt like a child staring at a locked door, knowing that behind it lay something vast and dangerous. Then one evening, as she sorted through fragments of intercepted transmissions, she found a broken signal hidden in layers of static. It was faint, almost erased, but the voice inside carried, "Fear, they are coming. Not enough ships. Retreat, no, wait, humans." The signal cut off with a burst of static. Yalara leaned back in shock. Her fingers trembled above the console. The voice belonged to a Korath commander, and it was the first time she had ever heard fear in one. Of their transmissions, the Korath Dominion did not retreat. They did not call for mercy. Yet here was proof they had once trembled. Her mind spun. Why did no one speak of this war? Entire fleets lost, colonies turned to ashes, and yet the galaxy went on as if nothing had happened. If it had been any other empire, the records would be filled with their downfall. Monuments would stand to mark the day they fell. But here, silence ruled. Yalara decided she needed more than fragments. She needed witnesses. She began contacting fringe worlds, planets far from the core where laws were weaker and stories lived longer. On the mining moon of Trass, she found them, old refugees who had fled decades ago. Their faces were lined with age, their voices cracked with memories, but when she asked about the silence, their eyes filled with the same shadow. "It was the war that never happened," one old miner whispered. "We saw it. We lost everything. But the records say nothing. The officials told us to stay quiet. They said no war existed. But my wife died in that war. My sons too. Don't tell me it never happened." Another refugee leaned close. "You want to know who stopped it? It wasn't the alliances. It wasn't the councils. It was the humans. They came when no one else did. They fought when no one else dared. And when it was over, they erased it all." The words made Yalara shiver. Again, the same truth returned. Humans, forgotten by choice. But why? The refugees could not answer. All they knew was what they saw. Human ships arriving in silence, painted black as if to blend with the void, small in number, but moving with discipline no one else had. They struck like lightning, breaking through. The enemy lines where even ancient fleets had failed. The old miner described the moment, his voice shaking. I saw them. I swear I did. A single human destroyer faced a Korath battleship 5 times its size, and somehow it won. The human captain rammed into its core and lit the stars with fire. I thought it was the end of the galaxy. Yalara's heart pounded as she listened. She could see it in her mind, the impossible image of fragile humans standing against giants. It made no sense, and yet the raw emotion in the refugee's voice could not be denied. Her search continued for weeks. She gathered story after story, scattered like broken shards of glass. When pieced together, they revealed a war too, large to be ignored, a war fought in silence, a war erased from history. Still, one question remained. Why would humans erase themselves? Her answer came sooner than expected. One night, as she sat in her quarters reviewing her notes, her console flickered again. But this time, instead of a warning, she saw a fragment of video. It was old, scarred by static, but still clear enough to make her breath stop. The screen showed a battlefield. Stars burned with wreckage, debris floating like endless graves. In the center, a fleet of human warships stood in formation, scarred but unbroken, and a voice crackled through the comms, deep and steady. This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Fleet. Operation Silent Storm is in effect. We end this war tonight. No record, no glory, no songs, only silence. The video ended. Yalara sat frozen, her chest tight. Operation Silent Storm. The name itself sounded like a secret never meant to be spoken. Her console went dark, and she realized her breathing had grown loud in the silence of her chamber. The humans had hidden. This not only from the galaxy, but from themselves. They had erased their greatest war, their greatest victory. Why? A sudden knock at her door made her jump. She turned, her pulse racing. Shadows moved beyond the glass window, armored figures standing in silence, not archivists, not guards, but something else. The door slid open slowly. The figures stepped. Inside, their helmets glowing faintly with blue lights. One of them spoke in a voice that made her blood freeze. "Archivist Yalara," he said. "You have gone too far." She stumbled back, her mind screaming, "Who are you?" The figure leaned closer, his visor reflecting her terrified face. "We are the keepers of silence," he said, "and you are about to learn why the humans erased the war." The enemy that shouldn't fall. The armored figures surrounded Yalara. Their presence was heavy, like shadows given form. They did not raise weapons, but their silence was sharper than any blade. She could hear her own breath echo in her ears as one of them repeated, "You are about to learn why the humans erased the war." They did not take her to a prison. Instead, they led her deep into hidden chambers below the archive. She had worked here for years, yet she never knew such places existed. Old stone. Walls mixed with technology far older than her people. Glowing scripts in languages she could not read. Finally, they stopped before a sealed chamber. The leader placed his hand on the door. The locks hissed open. Inside lay a room filled with forgotten data crystals, each one pulsing faintly as though alive. "This is the record that should not exist," the leader said. His voice was low. "You wanted the truth, so here it is." Yalara stepped forward, her hands trembling. She picked up the first crystal. A projection filled the air. A battlefield torn apart, stars burning, wreckage drifting, and at the center, she saw them. The Korath Dominion. She had read legends about them, every historian had. They were not just conquerors. They were nightmares made flesh. Entire species had fallen to them. Their ships were living fortresses, layered with weapons so powerful that even combined fleets had failed to pierce them. For centuries, the galaxy believed one truth: The Korath could not fall, but the crystal showed otherwise. The Korath fleet stretched across the void like a wall of death, thousands of warships burning with crimson light, each one dwarfing the planets they destroyed, and against them, the human fleet appeared, a fraction of their size. Hundreds against thousands, fragile ships compared to the monsters they faced. Yalara's chest tightened. "This is madness," she whispered. "They can't win." "Yet they did," the armored figure said. The battle unfolded before her eyes. Korath warships unleashed storms of plasma that shredded asteroids to dust. Entire lines of human ships vanished in seconds. The enemy laughed across open channels, their commanders declaring the humans would be broken in moments. But the humans did not scatter. They did not retreat. Instead, their ships moved with terrifying precision. Each maneuver was not just strategy, it was sacrifice. One destroyer rammed into a cruiser, taking it down with itself. Another frigate shielded a carrier until it launched its last strike. Every death had meaning. Every loss carved a hole into the enemy's strength. And then she saw it. One moment that burned into her mind. A single human battleship, small compared to the Korath fortress ship, broke formation and charged alone. The enemy laughed, calling it pathetic, but the human vessel pierced through layers of fire, shields burning away, hull collapsing. And then it rammed directly into the fortress ship's reactor. The explosion lit the void like a new star. The Korath fortress, the pride of their empire, split in two and died. Yalara gasped. She had studied every war in history, but she had never seen the impossible become real. The Korath were supposed to be eternal. Yet here, in front of her, a human ship had destroyed the unbreakable. Her hands shook as she whispered, How could they do this?" The armored figure answered, "Because they fought as if defeat was not an option, because they carried something the Korath never understood." "What was that?" Yalara asked, the figure's visor tilted toward her. "Hope." The projection shifted, showing more battles. The Korath grew desperate. Their arrogance shattered as human fleets, though bleeding and burning, continued to strike. For every human ship lost, 3 enemy ships fell. It was not numbers, not strength, but sheer will. Humanity fought like creatures with nothing left to lose, and yet Yalara could see the cost. Human fleets were torn apart, their victories bought with oceans of blood, messages between captains carried across, last words to families, promises. Whispered into the dark. One transmission struck her heart, a human voice. Steady though the battle raged around him, "If we fall, remember why we came, not for revenge, not for conquest, but so no child in this galaxy will ever wake to the sound of Korath drums again." Yalara's throat tightened, her eyes burned. With tears, they were not fighting for glory, they were fighting for everyone, for species that mocked them, ignored them, even despised them. The humans bled for a galaxy that had never welcomed them. She looked at the armored figure. Then, why erase this? The figure's silence was heavier than stone. Finally, he said, "Because the truth is dangerous. If the galaxy knew that the unbreakable enemy could fall, it would tear apart everything. Alliances, power, order, even peace would crumble. For some truths are too heavy for fragile civilizations to carry." Yalara shook her head. "No, this should be known. The galaxy should remember the humans. They saved us." The figure turned to her slowly. "You think they saved us, but you have not seen the end of the war. The Korath were only part of the story. The humans, they unleashed something far worse." Her blood froze. "Worse than the Korath?" The chamber darkened as the crystal projection shifted again. What Yalara saw made her knees weaken. Behind the burning wreckage of the Korath fleets, something else stirred. Shadows moving between stars, vast and silent. Her voice cracked. "What is that?" The armored figure's visor gleamed with cold light. "That," he said, "was the enemy humans should never have faced." The human strategy. Yalara's body stiffened as the shadows filled the projection. They were not ships in the way she understood. They were too vast, too silent. Their forms shifted like black smoke, yet they swallowed entire fleets in silence. No fire, no explosion, only void swallowing light. The Korath were monsters of flesh and steel. The armored figure said, his voice low. But these were different. They were older than empires. They had no name we could speak. No one had ever seen them and lived long enough to describe them, except the humans. The projection showed chaos, human ships, already bloodied from battles. With the Korath suddenly turning their guns toward these shadows, the Korath had believed themselves the ultimate predators. But when these beings appeared, even the Korath fled. The shadows devoured their fortresses as if they were nothing. More than dust, Yalara felt her knees weaken. How could humans stand against that? She whispered. The figure turned, his visor glowing faintly. Not with strength, not with numbers, but with strategy. The crystal shifted, showing human admirals standing over flickering maps. Their voices carried weight, even through the static of time. Admiral Kane stood tall, his face scarred, eyes filled with exhaustion. He spoke calmly, as though he had already accepted his own death. The Korath believed in power, Kane said, but power alone cannot defeat shadows. We will use what they cannot understand. We will give everything, and if we succeed, no one will ever know. This will not be a war of glory. This will be a war of silence. The human fleet did not charge blindly. They adapted. Where the Korath wasted numbers, the humans made every sacrifice count. Their smaller ships darted like knives in the dark, drawing the shadows into traps. Carriers launched. Drones carrying unstable cores, detonating them in the very heart of the enemy's darkness. But Yalara could see the cost. Each tactic demanded loss. Every clever move required lives. Destroyers detonated themselves to open a gap. Frigates threw themselves into the moor to give seconds for carriers to fire. The humans fought like a people who knew survival was worth more than their own blood. She pressed her hand against her chest, her heart aching. These were not warriors seeking fame. These were soldiers willing to vanish if it meant others lived. Still the shadows pressed harder. For every one destroyed, another emerged, and then the projection shifted again, showing something stranger. The humans did not only fight with weapons, they fought with memory. What am I seeing? Yalara whispered. The armored figure replied, Humanity is not strong, not fast, not immortal, but they remember and they share. Every captain, every soldier, every sacrifice was recorded. Every death became knowledge, and knowledge became their weapon. The crystals replayed desperate moments. A frigate captain transmitting his last-second maneuver before collision, another crew passing targeting data seconds before annihilation. Dozens of lives burned into memory, feeding the fleet with wisdom in real time. Humanity turned pain into guidance, and guidance into survival. Yalara's throat tightened. They were teaching each other as they died. Yes, the figure said softly, and in that, they found a rhythm even shadows could not break. The battle shifted, slowly, painfully. The humans began to push the enemy back. Their strategies grew sharper. Their sacrifices more precise. For every 100 lost, the fleet learned, adapted, and grew stronger. But the shadows changed too. They struck deeper, piercing human lines. Entire sectors went dark, whole colonies erased in silence. And still, the humans fought on. Admiral Kane's voice echoed again. We will not win by destroying them. We will win by binding them. And if the galaxy must never know, then so be it. Yalara's breath caught. Binding them? How? The figure's visor tilted toward her. That was the final human strategy. They did not fight to destroy the enemy. They fought to trap them, to seal them away where no one could reach. The galaxy believes the Korath fell to the humans, but that was only the surface of the war. Beneath it was this, the strategy to cage the shadows. The projection showed the plan unfold. Human fleets lured the shadows into dead systems where gravity itself twisted. Star cores primed to collapse, black holes waiting like jaws, entire fleets sacrificed to draw the enemy deeper. The silence in the chamber grew heavy. Yalara could barely breathe. She could feel the despair of those final moments, the humans burning their fleets not for victory, but for a chance to build a prison of stars. And then she saw it. The flagship of Admiral Kane, leading the last charge, every human ship formed around it, defending it with their last breath. The Admiral's voice carried across the fleet one. Final time, calm and steady. If this is to be our end, let it be the end that saves all others. Engage Silent Storm. May the galaxy never remember us. The flagship drove forward, carrying a device unlike any weapon she had ever seen. It pulsed with light, a star bound in metal, and then, in one blinding flash, the shadows were dragged screaming into the void, the projection cut to black. The room fell into silence. Yalara's hands shook, her heart pounding in her chest. "They won! They saved us all," she whispered. But her relief was crushed when the armored figure spoke again, his voice colder than ever. "They saved the galaxy, yes. But the shadows were not destroyed, only bound. And if the truth were known, others would seek to break that cage. That is why the humans erased it. That is why the record is forbidden." Yalara's breath trembled, her mind spun. What kind of power had humans wielded? What price had they paid to bury such a war? Before she could ask, the crystal flickered once more, showing the very last image, Admiral Kane staring into the recorder. His voice filled the chamber like a ghost. "To whoever finds this," he said, "we leave you silence, because silence is safer than truth. Do not search further. Do not open what we have sealed, for if you do..." The message cut abruptly, leaving the air heavy with dread. Yalara's lips parted, but no words came. The armored figure stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "You wanted to know why the humans erased their war," he said. "Now you must decide whether you are willing to pay the price of knowing the rest." The turning point. The chamber felt colder after Admiral Kane's words faded into silence. Yalara could still hear his voice echoing in her chest, heavy like a warning. Carved into her bones, "Do not open what we have sealed." She stared at the crystal, her mind torn between fear and burning curiosity. The armored figure stepped back, letting her breathe. His voice carried no comfort, only truth. That was their strategy. They bound the shadows, but binding came with a cost. And the cost was not only their lives, it was their future. Yalara's voice shook. "What do you mean?" The projection shifted again, showing fragments of the last battles, human fleets burning as they lured the shadows deeper, each maneuver precise, each sacrifice deliberate. They had succeeded, but the images made Yalara's chest ache, entire. Colonies had volunteered to stay behind, drawing the shadows toward collapsing stars. Whole families left messages, farewells to children who would never hear them. Yalara pressed her hands to her face, whispering, "They gave everything." The figure's visor tilted. "Yes, but even after the shadows were bound, something worse came." The galaxy looked at the silence, at the destroyed Korath, and believed the war ended. But for humanity, it was only the beginning. The projection changed, showing a hidden chamber on Earth itself. Human leaders stood around a great table, faces drawn with exhaustion. Some wept, others clenched their fists. Admiral Kane's chair was empty. His sacrifice had left them leaderless, and yet they stood united. A voice rose in the room. "The galaxy will never know what we did. They will not thank us. They will not remember us, but we will carry this weight so they can live free." Another voice answered, "Then we must decide. Do we reveal the shadows or bury them forever?" The debate was fierce. Some argued the galaxy should prepare, that they had a right to know. Others warned that fear would tear everything apart, Civilizations would collapse under the knowledge that a sealed darkness lay waiting. In the end, the choice was made. Humanity erased its own victory. They struck their names from records. They dismantled their fleets. They buried every trace of silent storm. Only whispers survived. Rumors among refugees, fragments in forgotten archives, Yalaras. Heart twisted. The galaxy mocked humanity as weak, called them reckless. Yet here was proof that they had chosen humility instead of glory. They had carried the greatest burden and asked for nothing. Her voice broke as she whispered, "They saved us all, and we called them foolish children." The armored figure nodded. Slowly, that was the turning point. From that moment, humanity chose silence, and silence gave them power the galaxy cannot understand. The projection shifted again, showing a darker side of the war, a scene Yalara had not expected. For in the heart of the final battle, when Silent Storm was unleashed, the shadows had fought back, and in that last moment, they had unleashed a weapon of their own. A black wave spread across systems, swallowing fleets, bending stars. For a heartbeat, it seemed even the humans would be erased, but then the flagship of Admiral Kane activated its device. The wave collapsed, the shadows bound, yet fragments of the darkness remained, lingering. Yalara's eyes widened. They are not gone? No, the figure said. Only sleeping, humanity caged them, but the cage was built from sacrifice, a prison fed by the lives of those who chose to burn, and prisons, archivist, are never eternal. The realization struck her like a blow. Humanity had not ended the threat, they had delayed it, and in doing so, they had placed a secret timer on the galaxy. Her chest grew tight. Her voice came out as a whisper. Then one day, they will return. The figure did not answer. The silence itself was an answer. Yalara turned back to the crystal. The images showed the aftermath of Silent Storm. Stars broken, sectors emptied, planets shattered. The Korath Dominion had collapsed overnight, their fleets gone, their fortresses destroyed, their people scattered. The galaxy had celebrated without asking who had fought. They had built songs of triumph without knowing whose blood bought that victory. The true saviors erased themselves, and yet Yalara could feel the hidden cost. The shadows were bound but not destroyed. The humans had given everything, but their silence left the galaxy unprepared. What if the cage broke? What if one day, someone discovered the truth and tried to use it? Her mind burned with questions. She wanted to scream at the armored figure, demand answers, but before she could, the projection flickered one last time. The final image appeared, a hidden human message, buried deep within the erased records. It was a human captain, younger than Kane. His eyes tired but steady, he spoke directly into the recorder. To whoever uncovers this, know that we chose silence not for pride, but for mercy. The galaxy is not ready to face what lies beyond. If our fleet has vanished from memory, it is because we willed it so. But if you are seeing this now, then it means silence has failed, and the shadows stir again. The image cut off. Yalara's breath caught in her throat. The armored figure stepped closer, his presence heavy like a storm. This is the turning point, archivist, he said. What you do with this knowledge will decide if the galaxy remains in peace or falls into chaos. Yalara staggered back, her thoughts spinning. She had wanted answers, but now she held the weight of a truth too heavy for one heart. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembled. What if I tell the galaxy? What if they deserve to know? The E? Armored figure raised his head. His voice was colder than the void. Then you will not only reveal the human's secret, you will break the seal they built with their blood. The chamber fell silent. Yalara's heart raced. She understood now. She stood at the same choice the humans once faced, and as the crystals dimmed, the air shifted. A tremor rippled through the archive walls. Distant, yet real. The figure turned sharply, his hand tightening on his weapon. They are stirring, he whispered. The vanishing empire. The tremor rolled through the archive walls, faint but undeniable. Yalara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The armored figure's visor glowed faintly as he steadied himself. His words were sharp. The seal is not eternal. Something stirs. Yalara's throat tightened. The shadows, she whispered. The figure gave no answer. Instead, he placed his hand over the crystal chamber, locking it once again. The lights dimmed, and the projections vanished. Only silence remained. But silence now felt dangerous, like the breath before. A scream. Yalara's mind swirled. She remembered the final words of the human captain's recording. If you are seeing this now, then silence has failed, and the shadows stir again. Her hands shook, her voice trembled. The galaxy does not know. They are blind. If the cage breaks, no one will be ready. The armored figure stepped closer. That is why the humans chose to vanish. They understood the cost. They saved the galaxy once, but to do so, they erased themselves, their fleets, their victories, their songs, all dissolved into silence. The galaxy believes them weak because the truth was buried. Yalara stared at him in disbelief. They carried the greatest war in history. They bore the heaviest burden, and now they are gone. Forgotten. Mocked as children in a galaxy they saved. The figure tilted his head. That was their choice, archivist. But silence cannot last forever. Already whispers rise. Already some begin to search. And if those whispers grow, the seal will weaken, and the shadows will return. The thought made her chest ache. Her mind replayed every story she had gathered from refugees, every broken transmission, every fragment of erased history, all of... It pointed to one truth. Humans had vanished not because they were defeated, but because they chose to disappear. Her voice broke. But where did they go? How could an entire fleet vanish? The figure hesitated. Then slowly, he answered, They did not vanish. They scattered. Their fleets dissolved into fragments. Their people hid among the stars. Some returned to Earth. Others never came back. Humanity became invisible, because being seen meant being hunted. They chose to be a shadow among shadows. The words made her shiver. The galaxy had laughed at humans, calling them fragile and reckless. Yet they had hidden a truth so heavy it crushed even empires. She stepped closer to the sealed crystals. If the shadows stir again, then humanity must return. They are the only ones who know how to fight, the Akai. Armored figure's visor turned toward her sharply. Be careful, archivist. Hope can be as dangerous as despair. If you call them back, you may also call back what they fought to bury. Before Yalara could reply, her console flickered. A new message appeared. Not from the archive, not from the armored keepers, but from somewhere beyond. This is not your secret to tell. Her blood froze. The message was signed not by an anonymous code, but by a name. Terran Command. Her lips parted. Humanity still watched. They were not gone, not truly. They were silent, but not dead. And somehow they had seen her. They had seen her search. Tears welled in her eyes. She whispered into the dim air, Then why remain hidden? Why not return? The armored figure's voice was low. Because the galaxy has not learned, you mock them, dismiss them, you believe them weak. Humanity will not rise until the galaxy understands what it has taken for granted. Until then, they remain silent, watching, waiting. The words struck her deeply. The refugees had spoken of human fleets painted black, silent and disciplined. The old traveler had said he saw them burn so others could live. And now she understood. The humans had not disappeared. They had become ghosts, protectors in the dark. Her chest ached with sorrow and awe. Humanity had given everything. And in return, they asked for nothing, not even remembrance, but the tremor that shook the archive haunted her. The seal was weakening. The shadows would not remain silent forever. She turned to the armored figure, her voice firm despite the fear. "If the shadows return, will the humans fight again?" The figure paused. His visor glowed brighter for a moment. Then he said, "If they return, it will not be the same. For the humans who fought Silent Storm gave more than blood. They gave their future. What rises next may not be the same humanity." "You imagine," her heart raced. "What do you mean?" The figure leaned closer, his words like a blade. "The humans who erased themselves did not only leave silence behind. They left a message, a promise, and that promise is awakening." Yalara staggered back. Her hands clutched her chest. She could feel the weight of destiny pressing against her. The vanishing empire of humans was not an ending, but a beginning. And then, her console flickered again. A second message appeared, brief and chilling. "When the cage breaks, we will return." The words glowed for a moment before fading into the dark. Yalara sank to her knees, trembling. The galaxy believed humans were gone, forgotten, weak, but she now knew the truth. Humanity had vanished only to wait for the day their silence ended. The armored figure turned toward the shadows of the chamber, his voice heavy with warning. "That day may come sooner than you think." And somewhere, beyond the stars, a forgotten fleet stirred in its sleep. Engines cold but ready, waiting. For the seal to shatter the truth beyond silence, Yalara sat in silence, the words glowing in her memory like fire. "When the cage breaks, we will return." Her hands trembled, her mind spun with fear and awe. Humanity had not died. They had not vanished. They were waiting. The armored figure stood beside her, his presence heavy like a mountain. "You understand now, archivist," he said. "The vanishing of humanity was not defeat. It was choice. They erased themselves to protect the galaxy, but their silence cannot last forever." Yalara lifted her head, her eyes burning with questions. "If the shadows rise again, why not prepare the galaxy? Why not tell everyone the truth? Why hide it?" The figure's visor gleamed coldly. "Because truth destroys as surely as lies. If the galaxy knew that the shadows were only sealed, panic would spread. Civilizations would collapse in fear. Others would seek to use the knowledge, desperate for power. Humanity knew this. That is why they chose silence. They gave us peace bought with their blood, but a peace built on ignorance." Yalara's voice cracked. "And if the cage fails, ignorance will kill us." The figure did not argue. He only nodded slowly. Her mind felt heavy, yet her heart burned. She could not bear the thought of humanity's sacrifice being forgotten forever. She could not bear the idea of mocking them as reckless children when they had stood alone against nightmares. Humanity deserved more than silence, she whispered into the dim air. They deserve to be remembered. The armored figure turned sharply toward her. "Be careful, archivist. To remember them is to draw their gaze. To draw their gaze is to draw the shadows. Humanity is not only savior, they are also warning." The words cut her. She wanted to deny it, but she could not. Humanity was dangerous, not because they sought conquest, but because they carried hope strong enough to defy the impossible, hope that burned like fire, and fire could save or destroy. The crystal chamber flickered once more. A final projection appeared. It was not battle, not war, but a message. A human captain, scarred, weary, stood before the recorder. His voice carried across the chamber, calm but heavy with sorrow. "Enori. The galaxy beyond us," he said. "We chose silence. We chose to vanish, not because we were ashamed, but because we understood. Power creates hunger. Fear creates war. If our story were told, others would rise seeking the same power. They would tear apart the seal we bled to build. And so, we vanish, willingly. Our names forgotten, our victories erased. That is our gift. To you." The image wavered. The captain's eyes seemed to meet hers. His voice grew softer. "But if you are hearing this, then silence has failed. The cage trembles, the shadows stir, and our choice no longer protects you. When that day comes, remember this. Humanity does not fight for glory. Humanity fights so that others may live. And if the galaxy must face the dark again, then we will return, not as saviors, not as conquerors, but as a storm that cannot be stopped. The projection ended. Silence filled the chamber. Yalara wiped her tears. Her chest was heavy. She understood now. Humanity was not lost. They had become a hidden blade, a silent storm waiting for the day it was needed again. The galaxy owed them everything, and yet spoke their name with mockery. That thought filled her with shame. The armored figure's voice broke the silence. You have seen the truth, Archivist. What will you do now? Her breath shook. She stood slowly, her voice unsteady but firm. I cannot let their sacrifice stay buried. The galaxy must know who saved them. The galaxy must be ready. The figure stepped closer. His shadow fell over her. If you speak, you may doom us all. If the galaxy stirs too soon, the cage may shatter before humanity is ready to rise. Yalara's heart pounded. She looked into his visor. Her voice cracked. Then what am I supposed to do? Stay silent. Pretend they never existed. The figure leaned closer. His words cut through her chest. You are not meant to choose for the galaxy. You are meant to carry the burden of knowing, just as humanity did. Her knees weakened. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to shout humanity's name across the stars. But deep inside, she knew the figure was right. Humanity had chosen silence for a reason. Perhaps the greatest act of respect she could give them was to bear the same burden. She whispered, Then I will remember, even if no one else does. Figure's visor tilted as though he approved. Then you are ready, he said. But before she could ask what he meant, the chamber shook violently. Lights flickered. Distant alarms echoed through the archive. The tremor had returned, stronger, deeper. The figure turned toward the door, his voice sharp. The cage weakens. Yalara's blood ran cold. It's happening already. The armored figure raised. His weapon, for the first time, his voice carried urgency. The shadows move, Archivist. Pray that humanity wakes before the seal breaks. The chamber doors blew open. A rush of cold air swept in. Beyond the archive walls, the stars themselves seemed to flicker as though something vast and unseen had shifted. Yalara clutched her chest, her mind filled with Admiral Kane's final words. If the galaxy ever forgets kindness, we will return. Tears fell down her cheeks. She whispered into the trembling silence. Then come back, humans. Come back before it's too late. And far away, in the cold void beyond the stars, ships, long thought forgotten, stirred from their slumber. Engines hummed for the first time in centuries. Lights flickered alive. Silent storm had never ended. It had only been waiting. The truth was no longer silence. The truth was awakening.